Hey traders, hopefully you're having a good day so far. We'll be looking at primarily 6 different charts, all related to do with either Bitcoin or its dominance, looking into a little bit of the relative strength for the altcoins, but really just one tool. The first thing we actually did want to discuss though before diving right in is we're not going to be looking at any specific altcoins, but if you are in our Discord, fantastic. If you're not, definitely check out our Discord. We post about altcoins, potential trade ideas, looking at relative strength, looking at potential altcoins that are relatively strong or weak, and kind of discussing how we view the markets in a kind of daily or at least multi-weekly updated post, which is definitely a pretty useful thing to know about. This week we talked about Cardano. Pretty high targets here, but we do see this final descending wedge breaking to the upside, pressing up right against this $1.50 range of resistance. And it does look like we are going to be seeing some buy pressure if it does actually break this key zone right here. A lot of the altcoins are in nice descending wedge zones. Sol actually had quite a bit of relative strength because it made higher lows. For example, compared to Polkadot, it formed a pretty aggressively descending wedge, whereas Sol had a nice, pretty well symmetrical triangle with a little bit of invalidation if you're looking at a smaller time frame at the first touch there, but it does look pretty well overall, relatively well respected looking at it from a larger time frame. Ethereum, we have been talking about for quite a while at that $2,400 zone. Once we do break this key level, or once we did break this key level, this was the completion of the zone of confluence, which we'll talk about later on in the video with the charts that we'll go over. But once we broke that $2,400 zone, it was basically, in what I wrote, was it tied to a rocket ship. In due time, we did have a pullback, but it does look like it is lifting off now back to our all-time high, past 4K, and I do think this first major target is going to be around that $5,600 zone, which is going to be a huge target for Ethereum. We talked a little bit about Binance Coin as well as PancakeSwap's Cake. They do look fairly similar. They had a pretty aggressive initial move to the downside, but since then they were able to form solid higher lows, and you can just see within the two charts here that they do look quite similar, which kind of makes sense. Binance Coin and Binance has very close ties with PancakeSwap. I don't know if they completely own them or it's very close ties, but they have some sort of partnership or something along the lines of that. So kind of surprising still that it's so correlated, but we can see it is breaking that zone of confluence there for both tokens, so it's looking very favorable and very bullish for both BNB and Cake. We ended off this little segment going over Quant, QNT. You can find it on, I believe, Binance now. I know it's on Coinbase. That's how I purchased it. But it has been a token that we've been keeping an eye on and discussing quite a bit during the run-up here, from around the highs to mid-60s, the little bit of a dip down that we were able to accumulate, and very aggressive push up compared to the rest of the altcoins that were unable to really get that buy pressure during this phase. So we see massive relative strength in QNT. So we're going to be looking for this altcoin to continue that relative strength during this bull run, because unlike a lot of meme coins and coins that don't have a whole lot of value or purpose or utility, Quant is extremely valuable and highly in terms of utility, very high, because of the fact that it is able to have interoperability between different blockchains, similar to the TCP/IP network or the protocol did for the interconnected networks, and the ability for different protocols and different networks to be able to talk to each other. And that's basically what Quant's overledger system is able to do, is have a system where enterprises are able to utilize different blockchains using the overledger system, which is kind of similar to the TCP/IP system. If you don't know the transmission control protocol and that internet protocol, definitely look into that. Revolutionized basically what we know to be as the World Wide Web today. Very high utility, long-term solid investment in our opinion. And then we looked at a little bit of DeFi coins. We were talking about Uni, Aave, Comp, and Sushi. Sushi was the only one that did not break our key zone. Sushi was in a nice double bottom here, and it was squeezing up against the $9.5/$10 key level of resistance. Mainly the 9.5 key level of resistance was the precise zone that we were looking at for a price point. And recently we did see a break, and that's what I posted recently here. But we are already seeing Uni break our major level at around $22. It was already holding to the upside, making not only a higher low, but also the fact that we broke this descending zone, this descending wedge here. Great to see, and it pulled back to test that valid level, which was also the apex of this wedge. Aave is already doing well. It was in a descending channel formation, and it was squeezing up against its previous high, and it popped to the upside. That's a validation because we were able to hold on the daily chart above our major level of resistance. Very bullish on Aave. Compound was tightly contracting. I did not draw this ascending zone here, but there is an ascending trend line connecting the higher lows for Compound, so it does look like it is forming a series of higher lows and lower highs, creating a symmetrical triangle. We had a strong initial push, initiate the momentum in the new trend for Comp, in my opinion. So that's validated, and all we needed Sushi to do was to break and validate this $9.5 zone, and Sushi clearly responded with the pullback. If we look on a smaller time frame, I'm sure there's some sort of descending wedge or some sort of contraction or channel there, and then we see a nice strong push to the upside, breaking this previous high as well as this previous high, which is around that $9.5 zone. So it does look like we are now seeing a completion and a follow through of all these formations within the DeFi market, within the altcoins. So not only has BTC broken to the upside, but it does look like a lot of the altcoins are now seeing a lot of momentum come in to start their next phase of the bull market, which is fantastic to see. We're now going to look into our 6 different charts. We like to start off with BTC. We're going to look at the weekly to start off here. And let's just wipe this all away. Kind of start from a very basic standpoint here. So when we're looking at this zone, I actually got a new tool that we're able to use here. We're going to be looking at this triangle. Let's get our squeeze. This key triangle right here, and then if we get this zone and then put it kind of the same way, it's going to be basically right at that same zone. Maybe that wasn't an absolute perfect line. There we go. And that's where we currently are. We're holding against this key level of significance. Not only is it a significant zone for the fact that it is at a 30K key zone, very whole number. It is the target if you're going to be using fibs just based off of this zone right here. You're able to utilize it even if you're using this zone right here. The extension is the 1.618 right here. So there's a lot of zones or a lot of validation that this 30K zone is a key level of support. And then if we're looking at a smaller time frame, we saw a contraction against this key zone of support. And what we're looking for is an invalidation of this head and shoulders, because what we were worried about and what a lot of individuals that have a lot of authority in the financial markets are pointing out is the head and shoulders that we saw right here. Right, and then we were poking out, and if that started to bleed out, that could be definitely pretty worrying. And a lot of people were looking at like sub 20Ks, 12K, 10K, somewhere along the lines of this zone right here, in between here and here. That would be pretty devastating for the permabulls or the people who are thinking that this bullish push is going to continue, because we were in a larger time frame still in a bull run. That was my case. Even when we were at this key level of support pressing down, yes, I did say that having some limit orders wouldn't be the worst thing. I believe within this level, in this level here, touching this previous high and this key level of support, that would be a pretty solid zone. So then if you're looking at it from, let's say, like the 13K as well as the 18, 24 was also a really good zone. So you could break it down, but we were really calling for a hold for a lot of the duration of this consolidation. And I think we're now finally at the point where we have consolidated down. Let's zoom in here a little bit closer and change the time frame to discuss the 2-day and make this a little bit more visible here. And then we're also going to be doing the same thing. Excuse me. So very similar discussion here. We were squeezing down against this key level of support, and we also were creating our nice higher lows, like we can see right here. So we were in a nice tight contraction, forming a descending wedge to the downside. Now, with an initial move to the downside, if we see a descending wedge, that could be a pop-up, and then the next worrying situation is we pop to the top of the wedge, and then we squeeze, and then we move to the downside like so. So we do still have to worry, but in my opinion, these key candles are indicating, to me at least, as well as the volume, that there is a lot more buy pressure than sell pressure. And we'll look at that within the different tools that we have as well. But it does look like we are, if we look at a smaller time frame, pushing out of this range that we've been holding since early to mid-May. Since mid-May to where we currently are right now, we've been stuck between just under the 40K zone and above just barely the 30K zone, and we've just been trading sideways. It does look like we're finally trading out of this range. There was a lot of downward pressure, but buyers were stepping in every single time to buy the dip, The commitment of traders for Bitcoin was indicating that there was buy pressure within the market in the bulls. So it does look like we are now completed this accumulation phase right here, and we're now entering the phase 2 of our bull market. And we'll look at this in a smaller time frame to understand what we're currently in. So before we get into that, the current structure that I am using is this zone right here, and I'm using the same structure, and this is the midpoint right here. So we are winding up right here to break out, and then we like to use this in terms of the overall geometry giving us the target. And we'll take a look at that when we get off this draw right here. So that's just basically what this is showing right here. You can easily draw it here to create a little bit more of a channel, here to create a little bit more of a wedge, but regardless, you're going to be using the bottom of the first wave's distance right here to the top, and then just dragging that over, and that's going to be the structure that we're going to be using for our potential first key level of resistance for our target here, which is going to be around that 60K zone. So until that 60K zone, that's going to be continuation. That we do have a minor level of resistance at around 50K, which is that key level of support that we saw back in earlier spring. But it does look like we are finally completed this accumulation phase, and we're continuing on. We're probably going to be hitting new highs, I would say, before the end of this month. I would feel comfortable saying that. So we're going to be going on to a smaller time frame here. So on the 4-hour, let's use that same tool and definitely increase the overall volume. And then we're going to be using that same tool here. So BTC, first talking about volume, we see massive buy volume coming into the market and not much sell volume. On the way down, we can see there's not much sell volume compared to the amount of buy volume on the way up. If we can kind of like break this off in sections, this is the section right here of the sell side, and this is the section of the buy side. Buy side has much more volume compared to the sell side, so that to me indicates that we are in a accumulation squeeze right here. We initially were squeezing a little bit too high up, And I think it just takes time to understand, like, too ascending or descending of a zone is not great when you're looking at a larger time frame. Like, yes, we did get a squeeze right here, but this was a little bit of an ascending channel wedge. We got a little bit of a puke down, and then we set up again, created a higher low in terms of a candle closure compared to the previous low, and that created our high. Because if you're looking at it from a larger time frame, we can see that this is two highs right here, and then we see a lot of hesitation for our third validation, and then we see a low, higher low, and then nice wick to validate our third low right here. And then this is our ascending support zone. So we've already completed the 3 zone. Let's draw them in right here. This is a little bit of an awkward one. You could kind of do it 2 ways really. I view it as 1, 2, and then 3, where it was a lot of hesitation. We were unable to get it. This splitter in the middle basically cut off the second zone, but we were valuing this as 2 zones right here, where you get 1, 2, 3. So definitely a little bit of a hesitation. It would be ideal if we were able to get a push all the way to that resistance there, where we're able to create that second high. That would be ideal, because then we can easily do 1, 2, and then the third high is that squeeze that we ideally like to see. But it does look like it is forming really well, and we just broke to the upside here, and this squeeze is looking like it's completing. We can see a little bit of a pullback, excuse me, but it does look like we are now moving to the upside. We can see a little bit of a setup here, but overall it looks like it is setting up to the upside, and that is great to see, not only in the volume but also looking at the price action as well. All right, so that's going to be our first chart that we looked at. Let's stick it back to the 12-hour. Now we like to look at the BTC market cap as well as the Bitcoin chart, because the 2 lines that are vertical show where the price is, or where the time is, where during the price, or where the Bitcoin dominance is, which is a really handy tool that TradingView integrated. So when we're looking at the initial push to the upside, we see BTC really start to rally after breaking this descending trend line, and then Bitcoin dominance starts to rally as well. And then when we start to see BTC hesitate and wind up, because this was a aggressive push from 31 all the way to 42. It went more than 10K in a matter of less than 10 days. That's pretty phenomenal. You're going to have some level of a pullback from that, no matter how, well, there can be some points where it just goes absolutely parabolic, but after a long drawn-out consolidation, it's good to have that nice solid push, indicate a new shift in trend, or at least push the price back up to the top of the range for it to squeeze out, and I think that's what we're seeing right now. But during that process, Bitcoin was rallying, and we saw that Bitcoin take a lot of its market share back within the crypto market. You see things like Ethereum, Cardano slowly track up. Ethereum's doing really well. Quant's doing really well. There's a lot of tokens that are coming back up from their consolidation, or at least starting to see some life again, which is fantastic. And we've been talking about that in our Discord as well as earlier in this video. But it does look like Bitcoin is going to be starting its new shift, or at least its shift in this consolidation outwards. And we've already seen that shift down there, but it does look like Bitcoin is continuing to push to the upside above this 42, 41-ish K level of resistance, trekking on, going on to make new highs and starting its second phase of this bull run. So we are going to be seeing Bitcoin take back a lot of its market share, or at least some of its market share, and it's looking really phenomenal, because if we're looking at a smaller time frame for the BTC.D chart, we're now pulling back, validating a previous level of resistance. We can see there's a lot of hesitation all within this zone right here, so it would be great to see like a nice long wick, maybe even go into the 48 range, and then we dive bomb back down, breaking below the 45 range. And once we do, I think we're going to see something maybe not as aggressive as this, but we're going to be seeing a very, very strong push to the downside for the Bitcoin dominance chart, indicating that altcoins are going to be appreciating at a much greater rate than Bitcoin. So it's looking like it's setting up really well. The 2 different charts are lining up, in my eyes at least, to a T. So we're going to be continuing to keep you guys updated and keep you girls updated and be trying to understand when that shift is taking place. But having those two different charts together really helps out. Next thing we're going to be looking at is the Bitcoin Volatility Index, and then we're going to be looking at some relative strength for the altcoins. Not really going to be diving into any altcoins, but the first thing we're going to be looking at within this pair is going to be the volatility. Like we talked about in the previous video, we get phases of increased volatility, or at least that's what we saw within the previous bull run back in 2016, later half of 2016 and 2017 really. And that's what we're seeing right now, where we're currently in a structured consolidation of volatility. Now, this isn't the price or anything. This is the average volatility for BTC. And we can see during the previous bull run, the volatility increases. It just makes more sense. More money's coming in. There's more emotion. There's more greed. There is just money flowing everywhere because altcoins are roaring. People are taking money out. People are taking money in. You know, people who are uneducated in the space or investing in general are coming in, having no idea, and that presents a situation where things get more volatile because there's more emotion and money in play. People that are not emotionally aware when investing are going to be more hasty, let's say. So we're going to be looking for the same sort of structure. We saw our initial structure, and then now we see our first significant structure of volatility. We can see that right here. We were kind of at the lower end of volatility, and we finally started to pick back up when we were recovering from this descending wedge, just touching below 30K, and then we ripped above the resistance zone, coming back up, and that's when we started to increase volatility. And the thing that we touched on last time is we usually see the momentum continue with the increased volatility. If we see volatility increasing, it's usually going to be a overall continuation of that trend in the direction that it initially went. You're not going to see volatility increase and then Bitcoin price move up and then suddenly Bitcoin price move down and then you see the volatility increase again. Especially when you're looking at a larger time frame like the 2-day, like the weekly, you're going to have points of weakness or points of consolidation, reaccumulation phases or distribution phases where you're going to have shifts in trend, and they do take time, or you're going to have complete capitulation phases, but you will have a point where it is contracting, and that's the point of maximum confirmation and confidence that you do have a shift in trend. So in my view, the trend is still moving to the upside, and it's great to see the BVOL chart, the Bitcoin volatility chart, start to move to the upside, because within this consolidation, we're now seeing Bitcoin volatility move up in a Bitcoin price moving up, which means with just looking at the previous chart of the BVOL chart, we can assume that due to previous structures that we've seen and the outcomes, if the Bitcoin volatility continues to move to the upside, Bitcoin's price is going to continue the initial trend, which is up, which is fantastic. And it is correlating well with what we're seeing with the Bitcoin chart. So things are lining up with multiple charts and multiple tools that we're using. Now we like to take a look at the relative strength. Now this gray zero chart, that's BTC. And this tool allows us to see basically every single alt that we can on this chart compared to Bitcoin, not the US dollar, because if you're speculating in the markets, the thing you're trying to beat is Bitcoin. It's kind of like beating the average if you're trying to beat the S&P within stock markets. If you're not beating Bitcoin, why invest in that alt when Bitcoin's a more secure network? It's the largest network. It's the most established. It's the most historic. There's a lot of things going for it. So if you're looking at things to invest in, why not just invest in Bitcoin if you're not beating it? So that's why we're looking at what is relatively weak or relatively strong. And the main things we've talked about within our Discord are things like QNT, Aave. A lot of the DeFi coins are doing pretty well up here. Matic, Doge surprisingly is up here as well. We've been actually talking about that quite a bit, but I've been bringing it up quite frequently within the meme coin money channel that we have in our Discord, which is a pretty good one if you're into kind of meme coins like Shiba Inu, AS, Elongate, Doge, all that kind of the Shiba crowd. Hopefully everyone understands what that is there. We see things like BNB. We've been a bull of BNB for quite a long time. Cardano, we've been talking about Cardano as well. We looked over that chart at the beginning of this video. We see HBAR doing quite well, Ethereum, DOT, Sushi, Comp, two DeFi coins that we talked about or talk about quite a bit in our Discord. But this is a really good way of not only looking at what altcoins are doing relatively well or not so well, but this is also a great way for us to understand what sentiment is in the market, because we're able to understand what everything is relative to Bitcoin. If things are dumping and most, if not all, alts are below Bitcoin recently, that's going to be indicating to us that it is a pretty bearish time. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty in the market because there's less speculation into these smaller altcoins. Compare this to a time if there's a lot of altcoins above Bitcoin, there's a lot of speculation, and Bitcoin price at zero is like all the way down here, and there's a ton of altcoins above the BTC 0%. That indicates a lot of speculation and a lot of optimism and hope and greed in the market. So it's able to provide you some sort of sentiment as to how the market's feeling right now in terms of fear, optimism, hope, greed, uncertainty, all that. All right. So now we're going to be getting into the last two different charts. The last one's going to be a little bit of a doozy if you haven't seen it before, but I'll definitely walk you through it. The next thing we're going to be looking into is the BTC hash rate. There was a question within our Discord asking, how do we know if the Chinese miners are back online? Because there is a Chinese exodus of miners in many of the provinces in China that we've talked about in our YouTube, in our Discord, in our TikTok. We've been trying to kind of spread awareness that the fact that the hash rate is dropping, and a big question of what came first, the hash rate drop or BTC price drop. It's kind of like chicken or the egg. I have my theories. We've been talking about that in our Discord or previous videos, which we can watch at a later point. But looking at the hash rate right now, we do see it finally picking back up, which is fantastic. Now, whatever the case may be, the chicken or the egg, hash rate first or BTC price first, we do see both the hash rate as well as the price of Bitcoin pick up from their lows, which is really great to see. And we almost saw like a capitulation event really back in June of this year, in June 26th, 28th. And from that point, we've been seeing that hash rate come back up. This could be the Chinese miners coming out of China and then getting back online and starting to mine right here. Could be the case, but whatever the case may be, maybe there's just more miners coming online because the hash rate has reduced, making it cheaper for people to mine BTC, making it more profitable. And then this has opened the gap for people to be more profitable or have the BTC mining sector become more lucrative for businesses or for individuals, entrepreneurs to venture into that sector. So could be it, we don't exactly know, but we do see hash rate increasing, which is a great sign. And the last chart that we're going to be taking a look at is going to be the upside down chart of Bitcoin. I know it sounds really awkward and hard to understand, but this is basically a chart of Bitcoin dating back to 2013, spring of 2013, and it is an upside down chart of Bitcoin. We can see this is the price. It goes from like $56 down to 10 grand, down to where we are currently right now, which is like 42 grand and whatever $100. So it is basically, it flipped around, and this gives us a lot more perspective from a technical aspect, because yes, it is awkward, but sometimes when you're looking at a market, you get bias from fundamental reasons, which could be extremely valid. But I found that using this method of flipping a chart upside down allows me to reduce my bias and increase the perspective I have on the price action of whatever asset I flip. So when we're looking at this, we do see this 30K level being a major level of resistance. Now, it would be nice to see, let's just do a quick little draw here and get this handy tool like so. We did see a slight wedge formation like we saw right here, but I don't think that we're going to be instantly dumping to the downside. This is the exact same thing with BTC. Obviously on the flip side, I think we will pass here, but it would be nice to see a little bit of a wind up where you're able to get like a nice bleed out. And then from there, you could maybe do something like that. And then from there, you're going to have a strong push to the upside. So I think this major key level right here isn't completely over. We're not going to be seeing like an absolute explosion right from the get-go. I think we're going to be seeing a little bit of hesitation. It's going to be a little bit longer than that, obviously, or shorter than that, I should say. Or it might be something along the lines of this, and then October, November, and then the absolute peak, maybe in like start of 2022 or something like that. But I wouldn't be so sure that we're going to be from here doing an absolute moon to the top. We're going to have quite a bit of hesitation within this range. We're going to be seeing a lot of opportunities for continuation patterns, but if you're kind of a long-term swing trader, I think it's a really good opportunity to start accumulating kind of anywhere within, if you're able to, this zone here above 42k, because we're probably going to be retesting it. We're going to be start trading in this range above 42k, below 62k, and then anything that is kind of within the just above 42k could be a really good opportunity for buy accumulation, which would obviously be sells for this chart. So that's going to be my view of the current market. We can take a look at a smaller time frame just to make it kind of interesting. Looks very similar to what I have in my normal price of Bitcoin, which is a good thing, because if you had two different charts, that would not be the best thing in the world. It does look like we are setting up for another continuation. It could take a little bit of time. Does look like it broke out, but I wouldn't be too surprised if we see a nice little pullback and then just a further continuation of a setup, because we've been consolidating for a while, and it's not going to like we're going to have a massive parabolic move after a long drawn out consolidation. It takes time. It takes the staircase, so to speak, where you're seeing continuation pattern after continuation pattern, and then the ascension of price increases in terms of the steepness of like the channel. This is really well seen with, for example, Quant. We're not really going to get too far into it here, but Quant's very similar, where you're seeing one level of ascension right there, and then you're going to see another level of ascension at a later point. And hopefully you can understand that this way, and then you're going to see at a later point an increasing level of ascension, like so. So hopefully that was really helpful. If you do have any other questions, please don't forget to throw them in the comment section, because we definitely do like to answer if it's pertaining to what we went over in this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this useful, educational, entertaining, it would be great if you do give it a thumbs up, because that really lets us know that we should continue making videos like this. And if you are finding these videos to be useful in your trading, if you're finding these useful, maybe even if you're just starting to get into trading, we definitely do appreciate letting us know or anything. If there's any comments that say to send your money somewhere, definitely do not do it. It is most likely a scam. Most people do not, if not, no one reaches out to people saying, hey, give me your money, let me trade it. Do not do it. It is 99.9, let's just say 100% a scam. And you should definitely learn through the various methods that you're able to, maybe perhaps watching our videos or Performante Premium, or being able to use different sources, however you may. Hopefully you are just playing it safe. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, traders, have a good one.